It's arguably the biggest story of the day. It's been in the making for 9 months, and today marked its finality. In a split decision of 5-2, the Apex Court today upheld the ruling of the Court of Appeal, which nullified the judgment of the Osun State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal on the grounds that the panel was not properly constituted. So in essence, the Supreme Court has affirmed Governor Adegboyega Oyetola's victory in the September 2018 Osun governorship election. Lots of reactions have trailed this decision as expected. So let's sort of take a look at some major reactions. We begin with President Muhammadu Buhari's reaction. He responded via a tweet, which he put up much earlier in the day. And this is the content of the tweet, which you have right there on your screen. The president says, and I quote, "This Supreme Court's decision lays to rest the tussle over the governorship of Osun State and removes all encumbrances on the path of a governor from fully delivering the dividends of democracy to the good people of the state." Now, the tweet goes on to say he commends the government and people of the state for allowing the rule of law to run its entire course. And then the president urged Governor Oyetola and the ruling APC to be magnanimous in victory and to make concrete moves towards inclusive governance as may be necessary. Moving on to another reaction, this time from the 2019 presidential candidate of the PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. Now, this is what he had to say, also via a tweet. He says, and I quote, "Those who think this is the end of the road for Senator Adeleke and the PDP in Osun are greatly mistaken. This is not the end, not even the beginning of the end. No, today marks the continued ascendancy of Senator Adeleke and his party in the heart and mind of his people." Let's move on to yet another reaction. The two major parties in this case also reacted. I'm talking about Governor Oyetola and Senator Adeleke. So let's listen to how Governor Oyetola responded to this decision.
I'm happy. They believe that judgment has come and has affirmed the mandate they gave to me in September last year. I will continue to dedicate myself to the service of the people. The love they have shown clearly demonstrates the fact that I must put in more effort to ensure that I give them the dividend of democracy. I'm the governor of the state. I'm the governor of everybody. I want everybody to come on board. We have one state, and we should all be committed to moving the state to the next level.
So let's listen to what Senator Ademola Adeleke also had to say. He put out a statement earlier in the day, and this is what he says, and I quote, "I wish Governor Oyetola well in the governance of Osun State. In all cases, we must thank God Almighty. We gallantly fought a good fight in pursuance of a democratic cause. The ideals we fought for lives on. Our ambition was never a do or die affair. We aspire to serve and deliver democratic dividends to the people of Osun State." So there you have the major reactions. There's so much to discuss on this major development. And we're being joined by Mr. Wale Oluwade, the strategy advisor to Senator Adeleke. He joins us from Abuja. And here in our Lagos studio, we have Mr. GT Ogunye, legal practitioner. He's a very well-known face on the program. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us tonight. Now, Mr. Ogunye, I'd like to begin with you. There's so much to wrap our heads around. And perhaps for people that are not legal professionals, they don't understand the terms of, the legal world. What exactly happened today in the light of issues such as technicality, the panel was not constituted well, and, it goes on and on. What exactly played out today?
What played out today, more or less, was what played out in the Court of Appeal, the appeal tribunal. At the tribunal, there was a consideration of the substantive dispute between the two parties. But as the dispute climbed the ladder, the determination turned basically, in my view, on technicality. And so the Court of Appeal in the appeal tribunal ruled that Justice Peter Obiora, who wrote the leading judgment, was not a participant in all the proceedings, particularly when some of the testimonies were being taken, and therefore he was not in a position to assess the witnesses and evaluate the testimony that they are giving. Yet, he wrote the leading judgment, and it was a 4-to-1 split decision. At the Supreme Court today, largely, the decision of the Supreme Court also turned on that issue. And so the issue of all the other issues that the tribunal dealt with substantively were in the back burner. But basically, the Supreme Court just simplified the matter and said the tribunal was not properly constituted in that Justice Obiora didn't participate in all the proceedings, particularly at the critical stage, and that therefore the judgment was a nullity.
Just to clear the air, the Supreme Court did not, as it were, take a look at the evidence, I mean, the usual thing that happened during the tribunal. They just picked it up from the appeal court. An
appeal process is basically very simplified. A Supreme Court or an appellate court is not a trial court. Although there is a rehearing of what had transpired, in the court below, particularly at the High Court, it deals with grounds of appeal, the issues for determination that are brought, and it's a more general consideration of the subject, because it's not a court that takes the testimonies of witnesses and so on and so forth.
Right. Okay, so we're still expecting the APC legal advisor to join us on the program, Mr. Babatunde Ogala. But before then, Mr. Oluwade, I know this is perhaps a bitter pill to swallow for Senator Ademola Adeleke's camp and the PDP. I'm sure you weren't expecting this. You were looking forward to a favorable outcome. But then what does this mean moving forward?
Thank you. What this means is, sending mixed, of course, like you said, I agree with you. We didn't expect this at the Supreme Court, because that's the highest court of the land, and whatever their verdict, that's the final verdict. You only appeal to God. In our own camp, as a Democrat, and as law-abiding citizens of Nigeria and Osun State, we have accepted the verdict of the Apex Court, regardless of our disappointments and disagreements, with their findings. Because basically, what transpired, is latching on to a technicality. Which is what the appellate court did, and the Supreme Court, did the same thing, accepted, the findings of the majority decisions of the appeal court justices, technically. So therefore saying, because Justice Judge Obiora did not sit on the 6th of February, therefore all the proceedings, for about 6 months at the trial court, the tribunal, was rendered nugatory. That is, putting it mildly, that is perverse. That's not justice. So while we accept the verdict, but the point remains that justice hasn't been served. Because you go to the law court, you're advised not to resort to self-help. You're advised to pursue constitutional means, because we are in a democracy, a constitutional democracy. The ground norm upon which this democracy rests, is the Constitution. And the issues, like Mr. Jite, alluded to, I was at the trial court, the tribunal, in its entire proceedings. When they gave their judgments, it was thorough, it was meticulous, it was detailed. You couldn't fault it on the basis of logic. You couldn't fault it on the basis of the Constitution. It was a well-reasoned, well thought out decision. And we were shocked, that the appeal courts, would jettison everything, and latch onto a technicality. By the way, if you say one of the judges did not sit on the 6th, even though he claimed by the register that he sat, one of the Supreme Court justices today, and the dissenting judge also, Justice George Maba, the appeal court, did say that the procedure, to ascertain that, was to issue a subpoena, to issue an affidavit for him, to state clearly whether he was there or not. And so for the appeal court to on the basis of, the register, it didn't sign, and so jump to the conclusion that it was not there, Justice Akas of the Supreme Court today said that amounted to mere speculation. Okay. But beyond that, the major fallout of this decision of the Supreme Court today is what does it portend for our democracy? Right. Because this democracy has a lot of bath pangs, you know. I mean, look at the EU report of June 15th.
Now, Mr. Oluwade, a moment. These are some of the questions we'll come to answer right after the break. And I also want to imagine you've been in touch with Senator Adeleke. So I'd like to get his immediate reaction, how he responded the moment he heard that decision. We'll take a moment on the program. And when we return, we'll take a look at major issues surrounding the decision of the Supreme Court. Stay with us.